He remembered the moment clearly, the moment he looked at the alien girl standing in front of him, trembling even though she tried to hide it. The sky behind her was dim blue, the kind that came before evening on the outer colony. People were walking around the market with crates, tools, and small hover carts. But for him, everything went quiet. The girl looked too afraid to speak, as if every word she wanted to say was trapped somewhere inside her chest. She kept trying, opening her mouth, closing it, lowering her eyes, and then trying again. It was painful to watch. She looked like someone who had carried silence for too long and didn't know how to drop it. He had only known her for a few days, but he could see something heavy in her eyes. Most aliens on the colony were used to humans by now, but she was different. She avoided every group, kept distance from every shadow, every loud voice, every busy street. She worked at the repair stall on the corner, usually alone, fixing small metal things with shaking hands. She barely ate. She barely slept. And every time someone tried to talk to her, she whispered the shortest answer possible, and then disappeared. That day he caught her standing near his shop, twisting the corner of her old coat between her fingers. Her eyes stayed fixed on the floor, moving slowly like she was studying the shape of the dust. He walked out because he sensed she needed something, even if she didn't know how to ask for it. He stepped close, and she flinched. Not in fear of him, but in fear of making a mistake. He softened his voice and asked if she was all right. She nodded too quickly, trying to convince him, trying to convince herself. But something was wrong, he could feel it. When she finally lifted her head, he saw tears in her eyes, not falling yet, only waiting. That was the moment he quietly told her, "Be brave, and speak your mind." It was a simple sentence, but for some reason, it made her freeze. She looked at him with wide eyes, like she had never heard someone offer her permission to speak. Her lips parted, but nothing came out, and her eyes filled again. She pressed her hand against her chest, trying to steady herself, though her voice still wouldn't come. That was when he stepped one small step closer and added softly, "It's okay. You can tell me the truth." Her reaction surprised him. She shook her head quickly, as if she didn't deserve honesty, as if the truth itself was something dangerous. Then her breath became uneven, and she gripped her coat tightly. It looked like she was trying to stop herself from falling apart. He didn't touch her, just waited silently. After a long moment, she whispered that she didn't want to trouble him. Her voice was so weak, it sounded like wind brushing over an empty window. He told her she wasn't trouble. He told her he had time. He told her she was safe. Those words made her look at him again. She wasn't used to safety. He could see that. She wasn't used to anyone waiting for her, listening to her, or giving her space to be fragile. Slowly, she opened her mouth and told him the truth he didn't expect. She told him she had nowhere to go after tonight. Her job at the repair stall was ending. The owner was leaving the colony, and she wasn't allowed to stay. She had rented a small storage room behind the market, but even that was being cleared out for new units. She had no family, no friends, no savings, and no one who cared if she disappeared. She explained all this in a rush, her voice cracking in the middle, as if every sentence cost her something. She said she didn't know where to sleep, didn't know what to eat, and didn't know what would happen after the sun went down. He listened without interrupting once. He could feel a tightening in his chest as she spoke. She wasn't dramatic. She wasn't asking for anything. She wasn't begging. She was only telling simple facts. But the facts were heavy. She kept saying she didn't want to make him uncomfortable. She didn't want to be a problem. She didn't want him to think she expected help. She just needed someone to know her truth before she disappeared. Then she apologized. She apologized for speaking too much, for being emotional, for taking his time. She said she shouldn't have said anything. She said she should have stayed quiet, but he stopped her with a gentle shake of his head. He told her she didn't do anything wrong. He said he was glad she finally spoke. She looked surprised again, as if kindness was something rare. Then he realized she was shaking. She wasn't crying loudly, but tears finally slipped down her cheeks. She tried wiping them away quickly, embarrassed. He gave her a moment to breathe, She looked exhausted, like someone who had been holding her whole world together with thin threads. When she calmed down a little, he asked why she never asked for help before. Her answer was soft but honest. She didn't believe anyone would care. She had spent too long hearing people say she should stay out of the way, too long being ignored, too long believing she had no value unless she could do something useful. She said she was scared of being a burden, scared of being judged, scared of being unwanted. That was when he told her the second truth, the one that made her stare at him like she couldn't believe he was real. He told her she wasn't a burden. He told her she deserved a place to stay. He told her every person, human or alien, deserved a chance to live without fear. He told her she mattered. Her reaction was unreal. The look in her eyes changed in a way he had never seen before. It was like someone had lit a small flame inside her. Something fragile but full of hope. She blinked several times, trying to understand his words, trying to believe them. She had lived so long feeling invisible that hearing someone say she mattered created a shock she didn't know how to handle. Her hand pressed against her mouth, and her breath trembled as if she couldn't hold it. Then she asked him a question that broke his heart. She asked if he really meant it, or if he was only saying it to be polite. Her voice shook so much, he realized she expected him to change his mind. She expected kindness to fade the moment she turned away. He looked her straight in the eyes and told her he meant every word. She cried again, but this time the tears were different. They weren't tears of fear. They were tears of relief, of confusion, of hope she was too scared to trust. Her shoulders softened, and she leaned against the wall, as if her body finally allowed itself to relax. For a moment, she looked like she was learning how to breathe again. He asked if she had eaten. She shook her head. He asked if she had slept last night. She shook her head again. He felt something strong inside him, something protective. He didn't want her spending another night in fear. He didn't want her wandering the streets alone after dark. He didn't want her thinking she was worthless. He told her she could stay at his shop for the night. There was an extra room used for storage, but it was clean, warm, and safer than the street. He didn't want her to misunderstand, so he explained carefully that it was only for safety and rest. Nothing more, nothing strange. She listened closely, and then nodded slowly, almost shyly, as if she wasn't sure she deserved even that kindness. He led her to the small room. When she stepped inside, she looked around with eyes full of disbelief. It wasn't fancy, just a simple cot, a small heater, and a blanket, but to her, it felt like a miracle. She touched the blanket gently, like it was something rare. He told her she could rest there anytime she needed. She whispered a thank you so soft he barely heard it. Before leaving her to rest, he reminded her once more to speak her mind whenever she felt scared or unsure. She nodded again, this time with a tiny smile that surprised him. It was the first smile he had seen from her since the day they met. He closed the door quietly, but stood outside for a moment, thinking about everything she had confessed. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but he knew one thing clearly. She wasn't alone anymore, and he wouldn't let her return to the silent, painful life she had endured. Inside the room, she sat on the cot, holding the blanket close. She whispered the words he told her to herself, as if practicing them. Be brave. Speak your mind. You matter. For the first time in a long time, she let herself believe they might be true. The next morning came softly. Light slipped through the small window of the storage room, touching the alien girl's face. She woke slowly, blinking at the gentle warmth she hadn't felt in many nights. For a moment, she didn't remember where she was. Her body stiffened in fear, the instinct she carried from too many unsafe places. But then she saw the folded blanket in her hands, the little heater on the floor, and the quiet space around her. It took only 1 second for her to remember his words from the night before. He had given her this place. He had told her she could rest. He had told her she mattered. Her shoulders relaxed again. She sat there quietly for a long while, holding the blanket close. She didn't know when she last woke up without shivering or without worrying about who might chase her away. This room felt unreal in the best way. It felt safe. something she never expected to feel on this colony. She stood up carefully and brushed her coat to make herself look neat. She didn't want him to think she was careless or ungrateful. When she opened the door, she was surprised to see him already awake, cleaning the tools on the front counter. He looked at her with a warm smile, the kind of smile that didn't ask anything from her. Just a simple, honest smile. He asked if she slept well. She nodded softly. Her voice was still small, but there was more steadiness in her eyes today. He offered her some bread and fruit from his morning basket. At first, she shook her head quickly, feeling guilty that she had already taken so much. But he gently encouraged her again, reminding her that she needed strength. She finally accepted, almost shyly, holding the bread with both hands like it was something precious. As she ate quietly, he watched her from the corner of his eye. She still looked fragile, but something inside her seemed different. She wasn't trembling like the night before. She looked calmer, like someone who had spent too long standing in storms and finally found a quiet corner to rest. When the shop opened, customers slowly came in and out. She stood near the back, unsure if she should stay out of sight or help. She didn't want to bother him. She didn't want people to think she was intruding, but he noticed her uncertainty and asked if she wanted to help with small tasks. She nodded immediately, relieved he wanted her there. He showed her how to sort small pieces, how to hand him tools, and how to organize shelves. She followed every instruction carefully, her hands steady for the first time in a long while. Working beside him felt peaceful. At one point, a customer asked who she was. The girl froze instantly, fearing rejection or judgment. But he answered, in a calm, confident voice, that she was helping him today. Nothing more was said, and the customer accepted it easily. The girl looked at him again, thankful for how simple and gentle he made everything seem. No one questioned her presence after that. Throughout the day, he noticed her watching him when she thought he wasn't looking. Not in a suspicious way, but in a way full of confusion and wonder. She wasn't used to kindness. She wasn't used to someone listening without expecting something in return, and she definitely wasn't used to someone standing beside her without pushing her away. She tried to understand him, but she couldn't, not fully. Humans were confusing creatures to her, but he was even more confusing because he actually cared. In the afternoon, the market outside filled with noise. People shouted prices, machines hummed, and hover carts floated past the stalls. The girl flinched at some louder sounds, habits from her difficult past. But every time she reacted, she caught his calm glance and slowly grounded herself again. His presence worked like a quiet anchor. Later, he asked her if she wanted to take a short walk to stretch her legs. She hesitated, unsure if she should leave the safety of the shop. He reassured her gently, telling her she wouldn't be alone, so she agreed. They walked together between the market rows. She kept close to him, still nervous around groups, but she didn't hide behind him. That was already progress. During the walk, he asked her about her home world. She tensed for a moment, then relaxed when she saw genuine curiosity instead of pressure. She told him small things at first about the purple trees that grew near her village, about the warm rains that smelled like sweet fruit, about the tiny glowing insects that floated through the night sky. Her voice softened when she spoke about these memories, even though they were distant now. He listened with full attention, asking gentle questions when she paused. She felt strange telling someone about her past. No one had asked her before. No one had cared, but he cared, and that confused her. She looked at him more than once, as if trying to understand what kind of human he was. At one point, she grew quiet again, her eyes dimming. He sensed a shadow pass over her face. She didn't need to say anything for him to understand that not all her memories were kind. He didn't ask further. He didn't push. He gave her space to breathe. She appreciated that more than words could express. When they returned to the shop, she stayed near the counter, helping whenever she could. Every small task she completed made her feel useful, something she hadn't felt in a long time. When evening approached, the shop became quieter. He walked to the storage room and placed an extra pillow and a soft cloth on the cot. When she saw it, Her eyes widened again with the same disbelief from the night before. She asked in a tiny voice if she could stay again. She looked down while asking, scared she was asking for too much. He didn't hesitate. He told her she was welcome to stay as long as she needed. The relief in her eyes was deep enough to make his chest tighten. She thanked him again in a whisper. After closing the shop, he brought her a warm cup of broth. She took it slowly, her hands warming around the cup. She watched him with a soft, puzzled expression, as if she was trying to figure out why he was doing all this. Finally, she asked him a quiet question. She asked why he cared about her, someone he barely knew. He paused, surprised by how vulnerable the question sounded. He thought carefully before answering. He told her that kindness didn't need a long history. He told her he helped because she needed someone, and he was there. He told her that no one deserved to face fear alone. He said she mattered, not because of what she could do, but because she was a person with a heart and a story. Her reaction was gentle but powerful. She didn't cry this time. Instead, she looked down with a trembling smile. Small, shy, but real. It was the first genuine smile she had shown him. She held the cup close and whispered that no one had ever said those words to her before. She didn't know how to respond, but she tried. And that alone was progress. She finished her broth and folded her hands neatly, unsure what to do next. He told her to rest, reminding her that she needed sleep more than anything. She nodded and walked to the small room. Before she entered, she turned back and looked at him. Her eyes were soft, full of emotions she couldn't express yet. She whispered, "Good night." It was the first time she had said those words to anyone in years. He answered her with a warm good night of his own. When she lay down on the cot, she stared at the ceiling for a long time. She thought about everything he said, everything he did, everything he gave her, without expecting anything back. Her chest felt warm and confused, like something new was growing inside her. She wasn't used to hope. She wasn't used to trust. But maybe, just maybe, she was learning. She closed her eyes slowly, holding on to one thought she repeated softly to herself. He told her she mattered. She wanted to believe it. Outside the room, he cleaned the shop quietly, thinking about her again. She was fragile, hurt by too many things he didn't yet know. But she was also brave. Even if she didn't realize it, she had spoken her truth. She had trusted him, even a little, and he felt a strong sense of responsibility growing inside him. He didn't know exactly why, but he knew one thing clearly. He wanted to protect her, help her heal, and give her a chance to live without fear. Tomorrow would come with new challenges, new truths, and new surprises. He didn't know what she would reveal next, or how deeply her past had wounded her. But he was ready to listen, ready to support her, ready to show her that kindness wasn't temporary. And as the evening lights dimmed across the colony, the girl slept peacefully in the little room, unaware that tomorrow she would say something that would change everything between them. Morning arrived quietly, with soft light touching the shop windows. He woke early, as he always did, but this time his first thought was about her. He wondered if she slept peacefully again, wondered if she felt safe, wondered if today she would speak more freely. He didn't want to push her, but he hoped she would slowly learn to trust her own voice. He walked toward the small room and paused for a moment before knocking. He didn't want to frighten her. He tapped the door gently and asked if she was awake. After a short pause, the door opened a little, and she peeked out with sleepy eyes. She nodded softly, showing she had been awake for a while but didn't know if she was allowed to come out yet. He smiled warmly and told her she could join him any time. She stepped out slowly, holding the blanket she had folded neatly. Her hair was slightly messy, her eyes still heavy with sleep, but there was a softness in her expression that made him feel relieved. She set the blanket aside and whispered, "Good morning." He returned the greeting and offered her some warm food. She accepted carefully, still unsure how much she was allowed to take, but she ate with more comfort today. He noticed her glancing around the shop as if trying to memorize everything. Maybe she wanted to feel more at home, or maybe she was simply amazed that she was allowed to stay. Whatever the reason, he didn't ask. He let her explore with her eyes. After breakfast, she quietly asked if she could help again. He nodded, glad she wanted to. She worked with gentle focus, sorting tools, cleaning old parts, and organizing small drawers. She moved slowly but with care. Every time she completed a task, she looked up to see if he was satisfied, and every time he smiled back, she relaxed just a little more. Around midday, something unexpected happened. A small group of customers entered the shop, 3 humans and 1 alien trader. They spoke loudly, talking over each other as they checked the shelves. The girl immediately froze. Loud voices always made her tense, and she tried to shrink behind the counter. He noticed instantly and moved closer to her side, standing between her and the noise without making it obvious. He didn't touch her, didn't draw attention, he simply offered silent protection. But one of the customers noticed her anyway. A human man looked toward her and then at him. He asked who she was. Her eyes lowered. Fear rising again. But before she could panic, he responded calmly, saying she was helping out and was part of his team for now. His tone was firm, but not rude. The customer nodded and returned to his shopping without another word. The girl looked at him again, confusion and gratitude mixing in her eyes. She didn't understand how he made difficult moments look so simple. She whispered a quiet thank you when the customers left. He told her she didn't have to thank him for basic respect. That sentence stayed in her mind for a long time. Later in the afternoon, when the shop grew quiet, she stood near the workbench and looked like she wanted to say something. She kept glancing at him, then at the floor, then at her hands. He sensed she was struggling with her thoughts, so he stepped closer and asked gently if something was troubling her. She hesitated but nodded. She told him she needed to say something important, but she didn't know how. Her voice shook a little. He encouraged her the same way he had before, reminding her to be brave and speak her mind. She breathed slowly, gathering courage. Then she told him a truth he hadn't expected. She said she had been followed before she found his shop. She said someone from the colony, a man she didn't know, had been watching her for several days when she still worked at the repair stall. She never spoke about it because she thought no one would believe her. She thought she would sound frightened for no reason, but she had seen him watching from a distance, walking behind her, pretending to buy things near her work area, and once she even saw him looking through the window of the storage room she used to sleep in. She stopped talking suddenly, her breath trembling, her hands pressed against each other tightly. She said she didn't know if he was dangerous, but she didn't know how to get away from him either. And then she whispered something that broke his heart. She said she was scared he might still be looking for her. He listened quietly, his expression serious. He didn't interrupt her. When she finished, she looked terrified, like she expected him to doubt her or think she was overreacting. But he didn't. He believed her immediately. His voice was calm but strong when he told her she did the right thing by telling him. He said she wasn't alone anymore. He promised to keep her safe and to make sure no one harmed her. Her eyes filled with tears. Not from fear this time, but from relief. No one had ever believed her so quickly. No one had ever taken her fears seriously. She tried to speak but couldn't find the words. He placed a small cup of warm water in her hands and told her to breathe slowly. She did as he said, calming down bit by bit. He asked her if she remembered anything specific about the man. She described him: carefully tall, worn coat, quiet steps, always looking around before staring at her. She remembered his eyes the most. They were sharp, observant, and cold. She said he never spoke to her, never approached, but he always hovered nearby. He made a silent promise to himself to keep watch. He didn't tell her that, but the determination grew inside him. He wasn't going to let anyone frighten her again. Later, they stepped outside the shop for fresh air. She stayed close to him, her hands tucked into her sleeves. She scanned the crowded market, her eyes moving quickly as if expecting danger. He noticed how tense she was and told her gently that she didn't have to go far if she didn't want to. She nodded, grateful he understood without her needing to explain. They walked only to the edge of the market. He pointed out a nearby food stall, a repair booth, and the security post. He told her she wasn't surrounded by threats. She was surrounded by people, by places, by options she never had before. She listened, still unsure. But his words gave her a little comfort. On the way back to the shop, she stayed close enough that their shoulders nearly touched. Not because she wanted protection only, but because she trusted him. Only him. When evening came, he prepared her room again. She stood in the doorway, holding onto the frame lightly. She looked like she wanted to say something but didn't know if she should. He waited patiently, letting silence open the path for her words. At last she whispered that she was sorry for being afraid. She said she wished she were stronger. She wished she didn't trouble him so much. Her head lowered with guilt. He didn't let her believe that for even a second. He told her fear didn't mean weakness. Speaking her truth didn't mean she was trouble. Trusting someone didn't mean she owed anything. He said she was already strong, stronger than she realized because she had survived things many people wouldn't understand. His voice was soft but full of honesty. She looked at him with teary eyes and whispered that no one had ever said such things to her. No one had ever called her strong. No one had ever supported her fear without mocking it. She didn't know how to respond to this kind of kindness. She didn't know how to hold it. He told her she didn't need to respond. She just needed to rest. She stepped inside the room, but before she closed the door, she looked back at him once more. Her voice was tiny but full of meaning when she said, "Thank you. Not for the room, not for the food, not for the safety, but for believing her." That was the thanks that mattered most. He nodded gently. After she shut the door, he stayed outside for a while, thinking deeply. Her truth had changed everything. Someone had been following her, watching her, keeping her afraid. He felt a fierce, protective feeling rise inside him. He didn't know who that man was, or why he had targeted her. But he knew one thing clearly. He wouldn't let anyone threaten her again. Inside the room, the girl sat on the cot quietly. She hugged the blanket close, thinking about the words he said. She repeated them softly to herself. "You are strong. You are safe. You are not alone." For the first time since arriving on the colony, she believed those words might be real, and she didn't know it yet. But tomorrow she would reveal something even deeper, something that would make him understand just how much she had been carrying. The morning came with a slow, peaceful light, but the calm didn't reach him. He woke feeling restless, thinking about everything she told him the day before. Her fear, her truth, the shadow of the man who had followed her, none of it left his mind. He checked the shop doors twice, then looked toward her room, wondering if she slept well or if the worry kept her awake. When he tapped gently on her door, she opened it almost at once. She must have been awake for a while. Her eyes looked clearer today. But there was something else in them too. A quiet determination he hadn't seen before. She greeted him softly, then stepped out, holding the blanket she had folded neatly yet again. Every morning she did the same thing, as if she wanted to show him she didn't take anything for granted. He asked if she wanted breakfast first or some fresh air. She chose to stay inside a bit longer. The shop felt safe to her, safer than the outside world. And he understood that completely. She ate slowly, thinking about something deeply. He could see thoughts moving behind her eyes, like she wanted to say something important but wasn't sure how to begin. After a long moment of silence, she finally spoke. She said she had something more to tell him, something she had kept hidden even yesterday. Her voice trembled slightly, though she tried her best to sound calm. He stopped what he was doing and gave her his full attention. She needed that right now. She took a breath, steadying herself, and began explaining. She said the man who had followed her wasn't just someone curious or suspicious. She had recognized him a long time ago, back on her home world. She didn't know him personally, but she knew his uniform. He belonged to a group that traveled between colonies, inspecting alien workers and moving them to different jobs. Many people feared them, not because they were violent, but because they decided where someone should live or work. They decided if someone belonged or didn't. They had the power to remove people quietly. She had worked small jobs on her homeworld, cleaning, carrying supplies, fixing tiny machines, And one day the group had come to her village to pick workers for a faraway colony. She wasn't strong enough, wasn't skilled enough, so they ignored her. But she saw the way they looked at others, the way they made decisions without speaking to anyone properly. She had always feared the idea of losing control of her own life, of being moved around without choice. So when she saw a man wearing that same type of coat on this colony, she panicked. She didn't know if he was here for her or for someone else. She didn't know if he recognized her. But the fear returned, the fear of being taken somewhere again, the fear of losing her freedom. She looked down after telling him this, afraid of his reaction. She worried he might think she was imagining things, that she was letting old fears control her too much. But he didn't judge her at all. He listened carefully, understanding how deeply her past had shaped her fears. He told her calmly that no one had the right to decide her life now. She wasn't in danger the way she thought, and even if someone tried to bother her again, she wasn't alone. Her eyes softened when he said that. She whispered that she didn't want to disappear from the colony. She didn't want to lose this place, or him, or the small moments of peace she had finally found. She held her hands together tightly, as if she was holding on to something fragile inside her. He reassured her gently, telling her that the colony wasn't the same as her old world. The rules were different, the protections stronger. No one could take her away without clear reason. She nodded slowly, trying to believe him, but years of fear didn't disappear in a single moment. Later that day, she helped him open the shop. She moved with more confidence now, stepping into her tasks instead of waiting for his permission. She organized the shelves and arranged tools without needing reminders. He noticed she hummed very softly under her breath, a small sound, but one filled with warmth. It made him smile. Around midday, while he checked the supply list, he noticed her standing at the entrance of the shop, staring at something in the distance. Her shoulders stiffened, and her fingers tightened around the cloth she held. He followed her gaze, his heart tightened. A man in a worn coat stood across the market, looking around slowly, scanning the stalls. The same kind of coat she had described. The same quiet stance. The same sharp eyes. She stepped back instantly, panic filling her expression. She didn't cry, but fear spread across her face so clearly that he stepped in front of her without thinking. He placed a calm hand on the counter, blocking the view a little. She held onto the edge, breathing fast. Her whole body trembled. He whispered softly that she didn't need to panic. They were inside the shop. She wasn't alone. He wasn't going to let anything happen. She nodded, but her fear was raw, carved into her from old memories she couldn't escape. The man in the coat didn't move closer. He didn't look at the shop. He simply scanned the area and then walked down another street. But even after he disappeared, the girl couldn't relax. She held her arms around herself as if trying to keep her fear from spilling out. He made her sit on a small stool and gave her some water. She took slow breaths, following his voice guiding her to calm down. He waited patiently until her breathing returned to normal. When she finally steadied herself, she looked at him with an expression she had never shown before. Her eyes were full of trust, deep and strong. She said she believed him, now believed that he would protect her, believed that she wasn't alone. He gently reminded her again that she didn't deserve fear. She deserved to live quietly, peacefully, just like anyone else. She nodded, brushing away the shaky feeling. For the rest of the afternoon, she stayed close to him. She didn't hide, but she stayed within arm's reach. He didn't mind. He actually felt relieved that she trusted him enough to stay nearby. Every time someone entered the shop, she looked up at him before looking at the customer, as if his presence gave her strength. As evening arrived, the shop grew quiet again. She sat at the edge of the counter, her legs swinging slightly, like a child unsure of what to do. She said softly that she wanted to tell him one more thing, something she had been holding for too long. He turned to her, giving her the same patient attention he always did. She told him she had spent years thinking she didn't matter. She thought she was invisible, replaceable, easy to forget. She thought her voice had no meaning, so she stopped using it. She thought there was no place in the galaxy where someone like her could belong. Then she looked at him and whispered that he changed everything. She said she didn't know how to thank him. Didn't know how someone like her deserved kindness from someone like him. He listened, his heart tightening with emotion he didn't expect. He told her she didn't need to deserve kindness. People deserved it simply because they lived, because they felt, because they tried. He said she had more value than she realized, more strength than she believed, and more courage than she ever gave herself credit for. She blinked rapidly, overwhelmed by his words, overwhelmed by the truth that someone cared enough to say them. When it was time for her to rest, she hesitated at the door of her room. She didn't want to leave the safety of his presence just yet. She looked at him with soft eyes and whispered, "Good night again." This time her voice was steady, warm, and full of quiet gratitude. He responded gently, telling her to sleep peacefully. Inside her room, she sat on the cot and held the blanket close, thinking about everything that had happened. She realized something important. She wasn't living in fear anymore. Fear still existed, but she wasn't facing it alone. She had someone now, someone who listened, someone who believed her, someone who made her feel like she mattered. She lay down slowly, whispering the words he told her days ago. "Be brave. Speak your mind. You matter." This time, she didn't just whisper them, she believed them. As she fell asleep, he stood outside the shop one last time, scanning the market to make sure the man was gone. The air was cold, but he didn't move until he was certain everything was safe. Only then did he return inside. He looked toward her room, a quiet smile forming on his face. He didn't know what the future would bring, but he knew one thing with certainty. He would protect her. He would help her build a new life. He would make sure she never felt invisible again. And somewhere deep inside him, a new feeling had taken root. Something warm, steady, and impossible to ignore. Something that grew each time she trusted him. Each time she spoke her mind. Each time she chose courage over fear. Neither of them knew what tomorrow would bring. But they both knew this. Their lives had changed because she had spoken her truth, and because he had listened with a heart wide open.